Well, good morning, church. Good morning. So glad to see all of you here today. Y'all look good this morning. You do. Now, just a slight uptick from last week, I'm just kidding. It's good, man. It's good. Thank you for being here. Thank you to everybody who is watching online. We're so thankful that you are here as well. I hope you're having a great day. I think it's going to just continue to get better, okay? It's just going to get better today. We're going to continue in a series entitled Make a Way. We have been called, Golden Corner Church has been called to something big. Y'all remember? Yes. 2 weeks ago, our church came together to answer a piece of that call. Our church came together and committed to generosity and sacrifice in order to expand our building and make room for more people to find what it is they are looking for in Christ. Would you like to hear what God did? Yes. We'll get to it. Not yet, though. Sorry, guys. Got to keep you around, We got a lesson to learn first, because I'm telling you this, as exciting as talking about that first step of commitment is, which we're going to talk about, I promise today, before you leave, we're going to talk about it. There is something we have to do if we really want to accomplish the big thing that God has called us to, and that is to help people find what they're looking for. There's one more thing, at least, we need to talk about. So if you would like, we're going to continue in our story, in Nehemiah's story today. Can I catch you up real quick, church? I'm going to try to do it even faster than I've done it before. Are you ready? The first thing we learned in the book of Nehemiah is this: God calls us to big things. Remember that? Just the way Nehemiah discovered that he was called to something much bigger than he ever expected, and that was to go to Jerusalem to rebuild the wall and restore God's people to them. We too have been called to something big, bigger than ourselves, bigger than Little Golden Corner Church, bigger than, it's a call to ministry. It's the Great Commission. Is to help people find what they're looking for in Christ. So the first thing we learned is God calls us to big things. Second thing was this: God must be in charge. Just the way God was in charge of every step, every piece, every detail of Nehemiah's call, God's got to be in charge of ours. You got it? I'm going to go quick. Number 3, we learned the next thing that we just got to do is we just do our part. Keep this thing simple. I'm telling you, there are tons of things to our left and right to be worried about. There's all sorts of, but here's the deal. As big as this call may be, you have a part. And it's whatever piece of wall was right in front of you. Pray, be obedient. Do y'all remember that? That's all you got to do is pray and be obedient. And that's what we did. Number 4, you ready? Yes. You got to protect yourself and the work at all times. Y'all remember that? Nehemiah had enemies come against him, and just the way he had enemies come against him, we're going to have enemies that come against us. And you have to understand we have a responsibility. We absolutely want God to fight for us. We absolutely want God to protect us, but we also have a responsibility to protect ourselves and the work at all times. We have to do that. We've got to guard the exposed areas. Y'all remember that? Watch over our families. Carry the Word of God with us at all times. Run to the trumpet when somebody else is in trouble. Y'all remember all those things? It's good, man. Last week we discovered number 5. You remember it? Restore unity quickly. Most of you just thought it had something to do with strawberries. That's all I remember. That has been a very popular thing, and that's good. God's people, as loving as we are, we will still experience disunity as a result of sin, disagreements, or fuzzy jerks, right? That's the way it is. Disunity, this is the lesson we learned. Disunity emerges and it grows like a mold in the church if you're not careful. That's the way it is. It's up to us to recognize when that's happening. You understand? It's up to us to see when disunity is happening around us. We got to see it happening in our family. We got to see it happening in our groups, in the areas of service, around the church. We got to see it happening, and we need to address it quickly. We need to make sure that we do whatever we need to do to restore unity quickly so it can be resolved so that we can continue the work that God has for us. I'll tell you this, a disunified church is not a functioning church. It's not a working church. You get so embroiled in the internal conflict that you're no longer able to look outward where we're supposed to be looking. You with me? All right, so everybody caught up? If you want to turn in your Bibles to Nehemiah chapter 6, and we're going to continue forward ourselves. Because I want to tell you this, once unity has been restored, once we're fighting the enemies, I'm telling you, this is what we're going to discover. The work continues on, right? The work has to continue on. But as we learn in Nehemiah chapter 6, the work is not without distractions, and it's not without more attacks. So read with me. Everybody ready? We're going to read just like we have been. Chapter 6, verse 1, Sanballat, remember him? One of the enemies, Tobiah the other one, Geshem the Arab, and the rest of our enemies found out that I had finished, look at this, that I had finished rebuilding the wall and that no gaps remained. Y'all see this? All the stones up. Though we had not set up the doors and the gates. So you got to understand, all that rubble. You remember the rubble from message 2 that we looked at? All of this mess, these walls that have been destroyed, these, what did it say? I remember 15, 30-foot walls in places. All of these walls are now standing tall. The only work that remains is putting in the doors, putting in all the gates, shoring up all of the entrances and exits. That's all that remains. You know what they call that, guys? Scott, you know what they call that? That's called light at the end of the tunnel of a great work. Not quite done, but right at the end. Right, Leslie? That's what it is. Look at this, verse 2. It says, So Sanballat and Geshem sent a message asking me to meet them at one of the villages in the plain of Ono. What do you think's happening? Oh, no. That sounds like a bad idea to me. Whoever said that, I never even picked up on that. I love it. It never even registered in my mind. I'm so glad you said that. Oh, no. This is not good. Golly day. I love that. What do you think they're up to? No good, right? What do you think they're trying to do? They're trying to get Nehemiah away from the work. Right? Get him away. Look at this. It says, But I realized they were plotting to harm me. Nehemiah sees straight through it, just like you did, sir. It says, So I replied by sending this message to them, I am engaged in a great work. What is he engaged in, church? Everybody say it. A great work. Nehemiah sees the importance of the work he's engaged in, right? He recognizes his importance in the work. I have to be here. This is of the utmost importance. I can't possibly leave. Look what he says. So I can't come. Why should I stop working to come meet with you? You can't miss that. Nehemiah recognizes how important the work is that he's involved in. And he says, guys, I just don't have time to talk with you. Maybe it was under the guise of a treaty or, hey, we're sorry, or I don't know how they were trying to convince him to come. They're just like, hey, we really need to talk. We're neighbors. We've had these disagreements. I don't know how they did it, but Nehemiah sees straight through it and he goes, guys, if I stop what I'm doing to talk to you, then I am not doing what it is I've been asked to do, what I've been called to. Everybody with me? Says, but let's continue reading. It says, verse 4, it says, 4 times they sent the same message, and each time I gave the same reply. Now think about that. They keep sending these letters to him. What does he say every time? Sorry, I'm engaged in great work. I can't come. Why should I stop what I'm doing to come to you? Come on, man, let's have a meeting. Nope, sorry, I'm engaged in a great work. Why should I stop what I'm doing to come and meet with you? You see the persistence that it requires from Nehemiah. He just consistently meets their request with the same answer. Sorry, what I'm doing is far too important for me to stop in order to meet with you. Everybody see it? Yes. Everybody got it? They continued to press him. However, he would not stop the work to meet with them. Look at this. Verse 5, they up it a little bit. The 5th time, the Sanballat servant came with an open letter in his hand. That's significant. Did you see that? Open letter. You know what that means? It means anybody's been able to read it. That means it's passed from Sanballat all the way to Nehemiah and probably been shared a lot. I think that's on purpose. Not only that, but when this messenger arrives, most likely it means he just reads it out loud in front of everybody. You understand? Church, you with me? Yes. It's an open letter. And this is what it said. There is a rumor among the surrounding nations, and Geshem tells me that it's true, that you and the Jews are planning to rebel, and that's why you are building the wall. According to his reports, you plan to be their king. You see what he's saying? You see what he's doing? He also reports that you have appointed prophets in Jerusalem to proclaim about you. Look, there's the king of Judah. You can be very sure that this report will get back to the king, so I suggest that you come and talk it over with me. You know what he's trying to do? He's trying to leverage him. He's spreading a rumor. He's sharing lies, right?
Yes.
In order to get Nehemiah. Come on. I want to point this out to you guys. Up to this point, the enemies have attempted to stop the work. We've already talked about this throughout the series. They've attempted to stop the work by mocking the entire group, right? By mocking their efforts. They've threatened attacks, right? Full frontal swords, soldiers, army attacks. They've threatened all those things. They've tried to just discourage everyone involved, right? With the resources they were using, with the work, the timeline, everything. They try to discourage everybody they can. But all of a sudden, the tactic changes just a little bit. And this is how I would describe it. It gets laser focused on whom? Nehemiah. This is how I would say it. It gets personal. It's not just about stopping the work, but they decide that the person that needs to fall, the one person that they need to take out is Nehemiah. You can't miss it. It gets personal. They decide Nehemiah is the key to stopping this movement, so they want to isolate him, right? Get him off. Come talk to us. Get him in another place, another town. Isolate him. They want to distract him from the work, and then they want to discredit him. You see that? They're trying to discredit who Nehemiah is. He's doing this for personal gain. He's doing this because he wants to overthrow the Babylonian king. That's what he's wanting to do. The Jews are about to rebel. That's what you're leading. That's what you're after. The enemy attacks Nehemiah's character and is attempting to create a situation, you have to see this, attempting to create a situation where Nehemiah feels that he must defend himself. Isn't that what you would do? Somebody starts telling lies about you, what do? Oh, that ain't true, right? You start picking up the phone. Hey, did you hear this? Did Evelyn tell you this? Well, that ain't true, right? I don't know why I chose Evelyn. That just happens in these messages. I don't know. The enemies are trying to create a situation where Nehemiah goes, I have to take care of this before this gets out of hand. They want Nehemiah worrying. You see this? They want Nehemiah rushing to defend himself. They want Nehemiah focusing on what they're saying and the lies that they're spreading and the rumors that are getting around about him. They want Nehemiah stopping everybody he possibly can. Hey, did you hear this? Are people saying this? They want him distracted and focused on all these attacks on him personally, just so they can get him away from what he is doing. Everybody with me? They want Nehemiah feeling like he has to engage this enemy. He has to deal with it. Look at what Nehemiah does, though. Verse 8, it says, I replied, there is, what are these words? Say it with me, church. There is no truth in any part of your story. Not a bit of it is true. It's an absolute lie. A farce. You are making up the whole thing. Look what Nehemiah says. He recognizes it immediately. They were just trying to intimidate us, imagining that they could discourage us and stop the work. The enemy's plan is still the same. We want to stop the work, but this time they're focused on Nehemiah. So I continued the work, look at this, with even greater determination. Come on, you see this. Their attack on him somehow is turned into, inside of him, a greater determination. Would y'all say that Nehemiah has sounded pretty determined this entire series? Sounded like a very determined guy. But when they turn the attack on him, when it becomes laser focused on him, when it gets personal, when it gets ugly, somehow Nehemiah is the kind of guy that is able to dig down deep and go, absolutely not. We're going to go at this thing even harder. You understand? We're going to continue on no matter what. Even greater determination. Nehemiah doesn't take a meeting. He doesn't heed the remarks because he knows they are not true. And he knows what the truth is. He has been called to a great work. Do you see that? He knows what he's been called to do. It lights a fire in him. This attack lights a fire in him, and somehow he continues on with greater determination. There's even more to this story. If you continue to read in chapter 6, one more tactic is shown to us. Read with me. It says, later I went to visit Shemaiah, son of Delaiah and grandson of Mehetabel. Okay? So this is Shemaiah, who was confined to his home. He said, look at this is real subtle. Let us meet together inside the temple of God and bolt the doors shut. Your enemies are coming to kill you tonight. You got to see. When are they coming to kill him? Tonight. No room for error. No second guessing. You've got to decide right now, what are you going to do? We're going to go to the temple of God and we're going to hide ourselves. Isn't that what they suggest? We're going to go into the temple. We're going to bolt the door shut. We're going to hide ourselves and we're going to protect you, Nehemiah. We got to protect you. They're going to attack. They're going to kill you. That's what they want to do. Little side note here. If you do a little research, what you discover is that where Shemaiah is recommending they go, this will be a sin. No one was allowed in this part of the temple of God except for priests. You understand? So Shemaiah is saying, hey, let's go save ourselves and hide in this place where God has said, no one can come but one of my priests. Guess what Nehemiah is not? He's not a priest. So he knows from the law of Moses that this would be a sin to do. Not only would it be selfish, but it would be very sinful. Read what he says. Verse 11, it says, but I replied, should someone in my position run from danger? Should someone in my position enter the temple to save his life? No, I won't do it. I realized that God had not spoken to him. This wasn't a message from God, so apparently Shemaiah was trying to play like, hey, God told me that you should save yourself, and it was okay for you to go in the temple. He says, I realized that God had not spoken to him, but that he had uttered this prophecy against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. He was a paid informant. He was on the payroll of the enemy. Verse 13, Nehemiah summarizes it again. They were hoping to intimidate me, look at this, and make me sin. They wanted me to be disobedient to God. They wanted me to do it and everybody know it, that I had sinned, that I had saved myself, that I had went into the temple, which I wasn't supposed to go into. It says, then they would be able to accuse and discredit me. You see that? The enemy employs another tactic. Church, are you with me? This one's really important. I want to make sure you hear this. The enemy employs another tactic, and it's not discouragement. It's not just the threat of bodily harm. It's not even just a distraction. It's maybe the most cunning attack that the enemy will ever throw our way. I call it the you deserve it tactic. Are you with me? You deserve it. It's a call to sin. Someone appears, and they're not an enemy outright, you know. It's not like they're just like, I hate you, or matter of fact, they show up and they appear to have your best interests at heart, right? Doesn't this, the attack of the enemy right here is to go, hey, you're in danger. We got to take care of you. You're important, Ernie. You know, you're important. You deserve it. We got to. You've done so much already. You can't die. You know, there's more that you need to do. We got to get you somewhere and save you. Does it seem reasonable? Thank you. This enemy arrives and offers a selfish, sinful, easily justifiable, and digestible solution. You with me? Go hide. Leave the work. Save yourself. Take care of yourself. Take care of numero uno, right? Focus on you. That's what you need to do. Focus on you. It's funny how that never sounds bad or appears selfish until you see it on the Facebook feed. You know what I mean? Focusing on me. Working on me. It's crazy to me how the taking care of me, saving me, never involves sacrificing, never involves serving, never involves doing what God has called us to do. You see what I'm saying? Nehemiah saw straight through it. And he recognized to shift the focus of what I have been doing, to shift all of that focus to me, it will lead to sin. And it will discredit me. And it will hurt the work that God has called me to. You with me? Everybody with me? Yes. So he said, no, I won't save myself. Should a person in my position, so a person who follows God, isn't that what he said? Should a person in my position save themselves? No. I've been called to lead. I've been called to be a part of this great work. I couldn't possibly leave all of my people and save myself. I couldn't possibly sin against God in order to do so. Read what it says in verse 15. He said no, and so on October 2nd, the wall was finished. Look at this. Just 52 days after we had begun. How long do y'all think this story was? Yeah. The long time. Look, I'm telling you, we're on week 6 right here. You know what I'm saying? So we're right there, right? We're 42 days in ourselves. 52 days! 52 days. All that destruction, all that mess, all those years of Jerusalem lying in ruins, laying unprotected, all of it is over in 52 days. All of a sudden, Jerusalem is standing tall, standing strong, and protected again. I want to make sure you understand this, church. Do you understand that generations of Jewish families had wished for this? Generations. Some had even tried. None had accomplished. For hundreds of years, a project that needed to happen for hundreds of years was accomplished in 52 days. 52 days. Less than 2 months. Look at this. When our enemies and the surrounding nations heard about it, they were frightened and humiliated. When the gates were up, when the walls were done, listen, the enemies were frightened and humiliated that this had happened. But look, they realized that this work had been done, look at this, with the help of our God. What was obvious to the enemies? What was obvious? God was involved. It was obvious to the enemies. Look, they go, that's impossible. The only way that could happen is God is back with his people. The only way that wall was built and that they've accomplished this and this city has come together, the only way that is possible is God did it. And they were scared of him. You understand? And they were scared of him, so guess who else they were scared of? They were scared of his people. In the minds of the enemies, it was obvious who accomplished this feat. So what do we learn? You ready, church? Last major lesson in this. You ready? In order to accomplish big things, if we have any hope of accomplishing the big things that God has called us to, then like God, we finish what we start. You finish what you start. I noticed something about Nehemiah that I greatly admire. It's something I love about him. Some would call it tenacity. Some would call it focus. Some would call it determination. right? These are different words that we use to describe the way. I mean, we've learned a lot about him. Do you feel like you know him a little bit now? As you went through this series, you feel like you have a handle on who he is? I would call it a faithfulness to see it through to the end. That's just who he is. These are attributes that I believe are representative of our God. You understand? I believe that this is evidence that Nehemiah was following God. God is faithful, right? So Nehemiah chose to be faithful. God was faithful to him. He wanted to be faithful to God. Scripture shows us that God completes the work he sets out to, right? Matter of fact, when we talk about us, it says, God shall finish the work that he has begun in you, is what it says. So God is a God who wants to finish what he starts, finish the work that he starts. And Nehemiah sees that. He says, well, then I have to be someone who finishes what I start as well. The Bible is clear that God keeps his promises and finishes what he starts. And Nehemiah said, well, then so will I. Nehemiah, though human, decided to respond to the call that God made. You understand? Nehemiah chose, in spite of hardships and enemies and temptation and struggle, that he would stay on the path, that he would finish what he started. He would stay focused. Do y'all see that in Nehemiah? Nehemiah had a will to see the thing through to the very end because he knew his God would. Nehemiah had faith that no matter what, as long as he kept moving forward and kept doing his part and stayed the course and avoided the distractions, if he just could keep on moving, then he believed that his God would respond in reciprocal form. You with me? Like God, we must finish what we start. In any big calling, you can bet there will be points along the way where the reasons to become distracted get personal, right? Just like they did with Nehemiah. They get personal, they get scary, and they get numerous. There will be points along the journey as you're answering this big call where the exit ramps look inviting. Even more than that, there'll be places along the way where it looks like stepping away or stepping out is well deserved. Are you with me? There'll be a point in God's big callings where you will have to choose whether you've made it far enough. You know, the walls are built, but the gates aren't up. There'll be a point along the way where you have to decide whether you've made it far enough or if you're going to see the thing all the way through to the end. You with me? There'll be a place where you have to decide, I've done enough or I finish what I start. I won't stop until it's over, until I'm done. You with me? Like God, you finish what you start. You have to decide at some point whether you will deservedly stop or like God, you will finish what you start. I like to work out. And I try not to use many workout references because it's kind of ugh. But I discovered over the last 6 years or so that I do like working out. And it's become a big part of my life. I especially like workouts that push you right to the edge. I like workouts where at some point, Curtis, I want to quit. You know what I mean? I've kind of just discovered that about myself. I like working out kind of intense, and I like to do different things where at some point you're like, I got to quit. I just can't go any farther. And then I like to just push all the way. Finish what I started. Matter of fact, I've discovered that if I don't work out that way, I feel like I cheated. I feel like I should just go home and eat donuts, you know? That's what I feel like. And so that's just what I've discovered about myself. And there's an exercise, though, that I discovered early on would take you to that edge really quickly. And it's not very manly, like a squat or like a bench press or something, or deadlifting or any of those things. Ironically enough, since we're in the book of Nehemiah, it's called a wall sit. You know what I'm talking about? Basically, if y'all don't know, I'll show you. Here we go. So basically how this thing works is you set a goal. And maybe it's on a workout sheet if you're doing it or whatever, and it says, all right, you're going to do a wall sit for 3 minutes, all right? So you sit against the wall like this, and here you are. See how it's not very manly? But here you sit, and you got to sit here for as long as you have decided previously. Now, it takes me about 30 seconds to realize that I was to want to not be here anymore. You know what I mean? To wish it was over, to wish it was done. And I'm telling you, it's incredible. Every time you're at the gym and you get in this wall sit position, it is inevitable that a few things are going to happen. Number one, your legs are going to start to tremble and you're going to be like, I wish it was over. You know what I mean? I want to quit. That's good enough. I worked out hard yesterday. I don't need to work out again today. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is a little ridiculous, you know? I gotta go home, cut the grass, do some weed eating. I don't need to just sit in this position too long, or I might be too tired for that. Anything runs through your mind to try to get you out of it. Not only this, but if you're in this position at the gym, somebody is going to walk over and want to have a conversation with you. I don't know why that is, and I can't do it anymore, okay? So, wall sit's going to become a sit. I don't want to show off in front of you people. Listen. Inevitably, somebody is going to come over to you and they're going to be like, hey, you know, yesterday at church when you said that about the Trinity, is God, you know, 3 persons and how does that work? And you're like, I'm dying. Like, I am in the middle of dying. What's up, man? How you doing? Good to see you, brother. You know, like, well, I don't want to talk about the Trinity right now. You know what I mean? Never fails, I have my earbuds in, phone will go off. All of these things happen, and you know what they're for? They're trying to get me out of what I'm doing. And I got a choice to make. Am I going to take this person who wants to have this spiritual conversation with me right now in the heat of a wall sit? Am I going to use it as an excuse to stand up and have a conversation with them? You know what I mean? Am I going to go answer the phone? Or am I going to finish what I started? When my legs are burning, when everything's happening, am I going to finish what I started? Am I going to go all the way to the end? Whatever goal it was I said. That's what it's like. When you're answering God's big calls, I'm telling you, you won't believe how much the world and your enemies are going to try to get you to stop. And you can guarantee it's going to get personal. And you will have to decide, have you done enough? Or are you going to finish what you start? Does that make sense? That's the truth. That's what you'll have to decide. Can I give you some real quick advice? Real quick advice. I got time. If you want to finish what you start, here's some things you got to make sure. Don't lose sight of how great a work you're involved in. You remember that in the story? They tried to call Nehemiah away, and what did he say? I'm engaged in a great work. How can I possibly stop? Listen, you can't ever forget how great a work you're involved in. If God has called you here, if He has called you here to Golden Corner Church, you are involved in a great work, and that is helping people find what they are looking for. And everything you're doing, in whatever capacity that is, whether that's loving on people when they get here, serving in the kids' ministry, serving in hospitality, if that's being in group and discipling one another, if that's giving, whatever it is that you're doing, you got to remember how great a work that is. That's what we're going to do, church. You understand? We're going to be engaged in great. We're not just doing church here. You know what I mean? We're not just coming in and singing a couple of songs every single Sunday. We're not getting a good word ever so often. You're engaged in a great work. Don't lose sight of the great work that you're engaged in. You understand? Second thing is this. You got to focus on the truth. They told all kinds of lies about Nehemiah, right? What did he say? No truth in what you say. I know the truth. You know what the truth is? You matter. The enemy will try to tell you you don't matter. Nobody, you know, what you're doing at that church doesn't make a difference. Right? Enemy will try to tell you, oh, you got to be focused on, you got all this stuff out here happening in your world and in your life. You need to shift your focus over this. This stuff's more important right now. You can get back to God later. You got to know the truth. What's the truth? I'm engaged in a great work. God needs me. God's called me to this church. It's where I'm supposed to be. I have a part that I play, and it's very important. You with me? You got to make sure you know the truth. I've tried to think about how to say this one. When the enemy does attack you, and it gets real personal, you have to find more determination. What did it say about Nehemiah? He continued on with even greater determination. You hear me? You have to find more determination. At the gym, you'll hear me say, you got to find that dog. That's what I like to say. I don't know why I say that. That's what I say. You know what I mean? Who's going to carry the boats and the logs? Sorry, it's going to be something like that. But somehow you got to take those attacks and you got to turn them into even greater determination to continue on to do what God has called you to do. You got to have a will to continue, to dig a little deeper. You understand? The fourth thing is this. You got to remember you're not alone. You got to remember, if you want to finish what you start, you can't ever begin to think that you're alone. What did the enemy say? It was obvious to them. They accomplished that with the help of their God. Right? You got to remember that God is with you. Even in those moments where it feels like maybe he's not, even when you feel like you're on an island and you're being attacked, all of those things, I'm telling you, you have to remember you are not alone. And there is a God who is with you, who wants to use you and is going to. He will not leave you. He will not forsake you. You understand? He's with you. What did that song say? In the morning and the evening. Every second, every minute. In your grieving and in your rejoicing, he is with you. You have to finish what you start. And in order to do that, I think you have to know all of those things. And you have to constantly be reminding yourself of all those things. But make no mistake about it, it is our God who will make the difference. Listen to me, church, everybody still with me today? Yes. The only explanation for what happened in Jerusalem was the plan that Nehemiah used belonged to God. You with me? The only explanation for what happened in Jerusalem was God provided all of the resources they needed in order to accomplish that. Do y'all remember that from the messages? He provided everything they needed. The only explanation for what was accomplished in 52 days was God united these people together for such a time as this that they could accomplish that task, right? The only explanation is these people worked with a strength and an endurance that could come only from God for 52 days. The only explanation was that God was with them and he did something supernatural in Jerusalem. Are you with me? That is the only explanation. I want to make sure you see this endeavor correctly. This was a partnership between God and his people. God called them, they answered, they did their part, and God did everything else. And it was obvious to their enemies. This partnership between God and his people completed a work that led to a tremendous supernatural outcome. Likewise, on May 5th, 2024, right here at Golden Corner Church, people came together and answered a big call on our church. We're going to make a way for people to find Christ. In order to do that, we had to give however God led us. Right, church? Give however God led us. That's the only thing we ever said to help expand our building and our space here. We were hoping to raise $850,000 towards a $2 million construction. You hear me? The goal was $850,000 for a $2 million construction. On that day, May 5th, (196 families committed to give $1,434,503.12. Over the next 3 years. The first fruits offering was $188,696, church. To give that, put that in perspective. Right now, in our bank accounts, this is transparency in a church, right? In the bank account, We have $331,391.52 in our general fund, and we have $316,602.67 in the make-away, with $1.2 million committed over the next 3 years. Do you understand the position that puts us in? Yep. The only explanation for what happened here was the plan belonged to God. The only explanation was God provided everything we needed. The only explanation was God has brought each of us here together for a reason. You hear me? Every one of you. The only explanation for this was our people practice a generosity that comes only from God. The only explanation is God is with us and He is doing something big at Golden Corner Church. I want you to see this correctly. This is a partnership between God and His people. Does this sound familiar? God called us, and we've answered. Now, all we got to do is finish what we started. You with me? Let's finish what we started. If we do so, we will complete the work, which I promise will lead to a tremendous supernatural conclusion. You hear me, church? We're going to continue on with the process as we planned, which means a lot of meetings and a lot more things before we come back to you guys. It may take a couple months. That's how it's going to be. But I'm going to tell you what we're going to do tonight. We're going to come together and worship as a church family. We're going to come together and celebrate what God has done and what the work that He is starting here for us. And we're going to have a good time. Right? Let me pray for you. God, thank you for this church. Thank you for each and every person that is here. This is my prayer, God, that you will be glorified, that we will serve you, that we will finish what we started. I am so thankful, God, for the generosity that you have implanted in this church, the people that you have brought together, the plan that you have given us. And God, I just pray this. I pray that you will continue to lead us every step of the way. You'll be in charge every step of the way, God. And above all, you will be glorified, and people will come to know you that do not know you. There will be room here for the lost. There will be room here for the messed up, the struggling, the hurting. There'll be room here for those that desperately need you. There'll be room here for those who are addicted, for those who are struggling in their marriages, for those who are trying to figure out what in the world, who they are in this world that tells them that they're not good enough. And I pray that this place will become the landing spot for them so that we can show them who you are. In Jesus' name, everybody says, amen. Church, I love you. I look forward to seeing you tonight. And y'all have a great day. Bye-bye.